Our first question is, what career advice would you give to someone who plans to take breaks in his or her career to attend to family responsibilities? How long is too long, and how do you decide when these transitions are necessary? And you guys can decide who starts.
So my suggestion would be that if you know that you're going to be taking a break from a career because of family needs and you feel like that's the best choice for you, is that during that period of time, I would keep track of those types of events and activities that you may be involved with, whether it be volunteering at a school or even some of your church callings, and kind of document some of the activities that you do and some of the goals you're able to achieve, so that you'll be able to still continue to build your resume. And if you do it while you are in the process of living your life, instead of trying to think back years later, it's far easier to do that. And I also think the question, how long is too long? I don't think there's a magical number. I really think it just depends on your family life and your circumstances and the inspiration of the Lord and what's right for your family.
We got these questions in advance, and when I read that question, I thought, I have no idea, because I had no plan on ever taking a break in my career. I can't have kids, so once I started working and knew I was going to work, I just kept working and knew that that's what I was going to do. And so it wasn't even something that I'd thought about until 24 years into my career. And I'd actually had my daughter for 2 years before I decided to make that transition. And so during that transition time, the thing that probably influenced me the most was that I continued to think about, how do I keep my skills? How do I keep current on what's going on? Even though I was in a break period, and I didn't know how long that would be, I didn't really anticipate coming back to work. I didn't anticipate taking a break. I didn't anticipate coming back to work. So when you say how long is too long, you can't decide that until you're in the situation. And you just have to be really self-reflective and attentive to what's going on in your own life and within your family, and with the guidance of the Holy Ghost, you just make those decisions as they become necessary. But when you do make those transitions, and I think that you've already heard some good advice, keep track of what you're doing and keep yourself busy. Keep yourself engaged in your professional life. Even if it's just reading the literature, staying involved in community events and community activities, do something that continues to help you grow personally and professionally. Because just because you're not in the workforce doesn't mean you're not growing. And so you want to be growing in positive ways. And so use your time wisely, because there's not a how long is too long. It depends. That's kind of the questions to all life's questions. That's the answer to all life's questions. It depends.
I'm not sure if I'll add much to that, because I think what you really have highlighted is spot on. But I do think one area is, this is that time where if you do take a break, this is the adventure time. A lot of times you're in a career and you take a break and you kind of let yourself just kind of wander, which is great. But during that wander, you might experience something that would actually be an experience that later on in your life enhances your ability in your career. So take the time to really get to know your freedom. And the reason I call it that is to know your freedom is, while I was raising our children, I had the opportunity to take a lot of training through the Air Force. And so I learned about resiliency, I learned about suicide prevention, all of those things that actually caused me to change the direction. I wanted to be a high-powered lawyer. That was all I used to dream about. And I debated with my husband nightly to practice so that I could be in a courtroom someday and win my case. But along the way, as I was taking those opportunities and discovering my freedom and the adventure that was with it, I actually got to know myself better and realized that I really wanted to be somebody who worked with the human potential. I don't want to watch diminishers continue to destroy innovation, and so you'll discover yourself. So if you take that opportunity, because that's the right choice for you, use it in a way that you don't regret afterwards, going, oh, I could have spent that time a little bit better and maybe learned something different about myself.
Thank you. Our next question kind of goes along with what you guys have been discussing, but how have you personally kept your skill sets sharp even when you weren't working outside of the home or being paid for your work?
Well, in the introduction, I took classes just for fun. You don't understand that taking college classes is really a lot of fun. And I enrolled in a second bachelor's degree program because I thought it would be great to get a bachelor's in religious studies, and just started taking classes. And I'm old, and so I was the grandma in class, and everyone else was like your age, very young and very vibrant and excited, and I would sit right in that very front row. People just thought I was weird, but it was very fun to take classes. So take advantage of the opportunities that are around you. I paid for it, but there are a lot of free opportunities as well to be involved in continuing education opportunities. And don't be afraid to try something new. My brother-in-law has a Harley-Davidson repair shop, and he needed somebody to do his payroll and be kind of an office manager. I will tell you, I know nothing about payroll and being an office manager and doing the things that you have to do running a Harley-Davidson repair shop. But he needed somebody, and he asked me if I'd help. And I said yes, and it was so much fun. I met really interesting people. I learned a few things about Harleys. I still won't ride one, but it was a lot of fun to do it. And so don't be afraid to do weird things. Now, I did do some consulting. I'm in education, and classroom management is one of the areas that I deal with. And so I did some consulting with schools and kept current and kept myself out there in the business. But if you only stick, as has already been mentioned, if you only stick with what you know, how do you grow? So try new things. Use that time to do something different so that you keep yourself growing and learning.
I'm going to put in a plug here for church callings. I found that shortly after I got married, I worked for a very short period of time, and then we started our family, and so I was out of the workforce for my entire life practically, except for a few little odd jobs here and there. But when I first went back to work, very part-time, at a preschool where I wanted my children to attend and I wanted the discount, then I had to put together an application, a resume, and I thought, I haven't done anything except volunteer at school, and I had been a primary president, and I thought, how can you even put any church callings on a resume? But it was very interesting when you put it in very metric terms and very non-church terminology. They were very impressed with my resume. I was really pretty excited about that, and it was surprising to me. So just you look at your church callings even as ways to grow and enhance yourself, and it's just amazing the skills that you learn despite it being something that we think is so normal and so regular. It really is, from the outside world perspective, it's great opportunities for you to grow and develop.
That was actually one of my really important emphases tonight, is that you magnify your calling. I am really amazed at how that is actually overlooked. And this is more than just saying, hey, you know what, my calling is there to fit in when it fits into my schedule, so I do it on Sunday only. That's not going to get you what your desired outcome is, especially if you do plan on getting back into a career sometime in the future. Because if you are actually applying yourself, the things that you learn, conflict resolution, you learn leadership, you learn to budget, you learn to debate with the bishop in a polite way so that you can try to advocate for those resources you needed in the Relief Society program that they're giving to the young women all the time. You know what I'm talking about, right? You really do learn how to negotiate. Those skills are so valuable. And there are resources online, because I've had to do this, that will translate that for you. So if you're really not sure, go search it. I guarantee you, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's out there 1,000 times and more. And if you can't afford classes, one of the great ones when I was wanting to go to university to be a lawyer is I went on to iUniversity, I think is what it's called, on iTunes, and I actually watched Harvard law classes, and I bought some of the books and the poli-sci stuff, and I studied them, and then I debated it with anybody I could. Your ability is only held back by what your imagination limits it to. So get out there, talk to people, and find out, because one of the greatest opportunities I think I was given was, so because we were in the military, I did a lot of events, and because of what I did at church for planning events, I actually got to plan a 3-star general's dinner. They hosted a dinner for like 50 or 60 people, and so I get to put that on my resume, that I actually was the party coordinator for a 3-star general. That I was just like, and the reason I got it, because of everything I did at church. Don't overestimate what you can gain, or underestimate what you can get from there. Overestimate. Try to achieve it, because what you're doing is the Lord's just building up all those blessings He's going to give to you later on, because I believe it. He says through Him anything is possible that's righteous, and if you serve Him, oh my gosh, the doors that will open and the people that will appreciate you, you will not be able, you'll have to close them yourself.
I'm going to say one more thing. Get a library card, keep your library card, and go to the library often. Okay, read a lot of different kinds of literature. Read a lot of different books. And you're thinking now you have no time for that, I know. You will when you get done with school. I guess my advice is do it anyway. Take a little bit of time every day to read something just for fun, because you will learn interesting things that aren't part of class, and it makes you more able to interact with a variety of people. You know, one of the things when you're out of the workforce for a while, your world can become very small if you're not careful. You know, you're at home, and yes, you have your church callings and you're involved in your ward or your stake, but your world can close in just a little bit. So you have to keep your world open. You have to keep putting yourself out there. And if you are reading the newspaper, watching the news, reading books, you know what's going on, you get yourself involved in community activities, you want to continue to expand your world, not close your world off.
Thank you. The next couple of questions are more examples that some students or people might have in the upcoming years of our lives. So we'd like to share these experiences with you and maybe just ask for your suggestions to them. First one is, I've taken a few years off from working and I feel like I need current experience before I can re-enter the workforce. Where do I start? I feel like I need experience to gain experience.
Okay, so this is where I am right now. How many of you been to Paris? Raise your hand if you've been to. Okay, have you ever driven through, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Arc de Triomphe? Okay, that's what you feel like right now, is you're stuck in the middle and you're trying to get out. And everything that you're doing just feels like you're just going in a circle. And it reminds me of the Hunger Games, where they're like, may the odds be with you. I'm like, yeah, because it's like life and death. I'm trying to figure out how to get an education, have experience, so that when my resume gets out there, I'm not just doing this here. I'll write it, I will print it out, I will spray it around, and I'll pray really deep and hard that Heavenly Father helps me get a job, because that's not what's going to happen. So I think the biggest thing is that, and that's why I kind of got a little excited, is I've had to really learn to network. And I'm used to networking inside of my military setting, which has been a great advantage because all military members get out. And so their spouses are friends and connections and stuff like that. But I've learned that just by talking about it and being passionate about what you do, there has been 2 individuals in casual conversations who I just met on a sideline type of event who've already offered me internships when I get done. And I was like, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought. But if I hadn't taken the time to network into those settings, and you've got to be risk too, take risks. There's a podcast I absolutely thoroughly love, and I have like 30 or 40 on mine. So if you ever want podcasts, I've got them. I'll tell you about it. But there's a host that I really enjoyed listening to. So there was a very small connection I noticed on LinkedIn that we had. So I sent him a little note and said, can I connect with you? And he sent me back, he's like, sure. And then he made mention of the person that that connected us. And he even offered to mentor me because he's doing exactly what I do. His viewing audience is massive. And he cared about me. And all it took was the courage to write a little, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. So yes, your business 320 is so pertinent, okay? Because this is what's gonna happen is, depending where you guys are right now in your education and stuff, this is where I am at, and I know how hard this can be. And can you imagine being a grandma of 3 with gray hair? And you're just like trying to get them to say, don't look at them, they're young. Look at me, I can do this. Which I hate to say that I'm doing that, but I am. But it is, you guys can do this if you are willing to just take the risks, talk about yourself, and be comfortable, and the odds are in your favor. We're not in the Hunger Games. We're not going to die, thank heaven. And we'll get out of that circle. It may take a little more time, but just press forward and believe in yourself, I think.
I just want to add, a lot of times when we're out of the workforce and we kind of have been involved in raising a family, and society doesn't necessarily look at that favorably, and they kind of have a tendency to believe that you are not reaching your potential when you stay home. And so you've got to fight that and recognize that what you're doing is the greatest thing that you're on the earth to do because of the impact that you have. So take that realization and be confident in what you are doing, and take that confidence to move forward, and recognize that you have had one of the most diverse experiences by staying home and raising a family and raising children that you could ever possibly have, compared to what people have done in the workforce. Because many times in the workforce, you just are kind of doing the same job, the same routine, you get good at it, and you keep doing a lot of the same things that you've done for years and years. But as a mother, it is diverse and different all the time. And so it's important to look past that feeling of inadequacy that you may have, thinking that you've been out of the workforce too long, and recognize the skills that you have developed because of your experience. And then take that and be confident with it. And when you put together a resume, put things in measurable terms so that people can recognize the great skills that you have developed. And resumes can be great confidence boosters when you start to really write them in a manner that states the accomplishments that you have made. And then it helps you to really recognize what it is that you have achieved.
Thank you.
And I'm going to say one thing, yeah. So my daughter's second grade teacher used to tell the kids, loud and proud, loud and proud. If you've been out of the workforce for a while, even if you don't feel like you have quite the same experience, you want to make a lot of noise about the experience you do have. Don't be shy about it. Be loud and proud, because you've done good things. And there's where you take your volunteer work, your church service. You may not have experience in the workplace, but that's not the only place. I think we've heard that several times now. But you have to be willing to brag about yourself. We're taught to be humble, and that's a good thing, but there's a time that you brag. So if you're uncomfortable doing that, start standing in front of the mirror and brag about yourself. Talk about the things that you're good at. Talk about the qualities that are marketable, the things that make you unique, that some of your great skills. And we're oftentimes not willing to talk about those. Knock it off. Talk about them, and talk about them loud.
Thank you. That's a great lead into our next question, which is, how do I present myself as competitive or relevant when I've been out of the professional workforce for several years?
Do we have anything to add?
I'll do that. Actually, because you know what, just to build off of what they've said, and I wrote this down because it was in an article. It says, never underestimate what you have done while not in the professional setting. Be self-assured, project confidence in your career decision to stay home with your children, meaning don't apologize ever for the choice. The right employer will appreciate what you bring to the table. We as women, and this is me, okay, we internalize our decisions, and we literally will start apologizing for the things that were the best choices in our life. And what we do is we diminish those acceptance of those choices when we start to apologize in front of other people for them. Oh, I'm sorry, I've been a stay-at-home mom. No, I have been, as I call myself, the CEO of the Holiday Incorporated for the last 30 years. And oh my goodness, can I tell you, I could run your company right now if you wanted me to. I don't really say that, but that is the thing, is you've got to be able to recognize that you're naive if you think that apologizing for something like that makes you seem humble or better by doing it. It doesn't. It erases it, and we want to be a multiplier of all of those experiences. And you've got to stay current on the lingo. And unfortunately, this was where I fell short. Like right now, secretaries used to be what we used to call them. They're now called administrative assistants. I remember when I first started getting back into social media, because I was very opposed to it, and someone was talking about Twitter. I thought they were talking about birds. I really did. And then I had a friend who was telling me about LinkedIn one time, and I thought, oh, you were in prison? I am really sorry. I had to go home and actually ask my husband, did you know JJ was in prison? What are you talking about? I think, no, it was LinkedIn. Oh, okay. You've got to stay current on the trends of what's going on, even if you don't agree with them. Because if you don't stay on top of those trends, then basically you're the author of your stories, okay? You're writing this whole entire book you're going to present to Heavenly Father. So you're writing a spider web. Do you remember? Or is it a story web? That's it, right? Yeah. You're writing a story web. It needs to be fluid because it's going to change. But you're the one that gets to determine how you want to do that. So stay engaged in everything that you can to stay relevant in what is currently happening. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why you need a library card. Don't ever let your library card expire. Do you have anything else to add? I think we've talked that one around and around. I'm not sure we have a lot new to tell you. We've told you a lot already.
The next example or situation that we'd like to address says, I would like to take a break in my professional development, but I want to stay engaged in my industry. However, I have limited time and resources. What do you recommend?
I know we've covered a lot of this already, but I think one thing I'd really like to promote is volunteering. It's really easy to volunteer in your children's classrooms and schools, but there are so many opportunities out there to volunteer in different organizations and in your community. And volunteering doesn't mean that it's not worth as much as a job. It is just as relevant because of the experience that you gain. And the thing that's nice is, as a volunteer, you've got more flexibility. Because when you're paid, you need to do what the employer says. You need to be there when he says to be there. But when you're a volunteer, you've got flexibility, and you can have some control over how much time you're going to spend and how much you're going to give. But it does keep you current, and it keeps you engaged, and it keeps your skills sharpened. And so there are so many opportunities now out there. It is not hard to find any organization that you're interested in or you think will help to keep you more engaged in what you're interested in.
And the church has made it really easy because there's the Just Serve website, and just about every area has something online where there's a need. And most organizations, not large businesses, but most social organizations, if you walk in and say, I'm interested in volunteering, is there anything that you need done? They will be thrilled. Mm-hmm. So find an organization that you're interested in and go in and talk to them. Let them know you're curious about what's going on there, that you'd like to serve, that you'd like to volunteer, even if it's just a few hours a week. You keep yourself engaged and you network. Mm-hmm. You'll meet people that way. You might find some skills that you didn't know you had. Be willing to get down and dirty, because sometimes it is physical, tough work, but be willing to take the challenge. There's lots and lots of opportunities out there. So if you're sitting at home thinking, I don't have any way to grow, then you're not looking, because there are plenty.
In fact, that just spurred a thought, because there's the fact that you've got hobbies you enjoy. And so if you're taking a break, try to take your career, maybe put it towards some type of a hobby. I had a really neat friend who one time, she loved doing triathlons, but for moms, that was really difficult. So this was a while back, but she created a little group that we all were able to go out, and we would do practices for triathlons or whatever it was that we were doing. But she created this little community that ended up growing into quite a few people. Yeah, and you end up using a lot of the skills that you have, and again, you get to put that on and you can even call yourself an entrepreneur, I believe. I don't think that would be a lie, because you created something. So sometimes if you already love your career but you have a hobby, see if sometimes they're adaptable, and you might be able to figure out something that might even turn into an actual business someday in the future.
Thank you. Our final question before we turn it over to the audience is, after leaving a meaningful career path for several years to focus on family, how did you adapt between career lifestyle to home life and then back to career? And what advice can you give to those to make those transitions easier?
That's got to be you.
Because I had a long career before me, and then kind of a long break. I think the hardest thing for me, and I was excited to come back to work. I'd been on faculty here at BYU Hawaii in 2004, 2005, and then left, and that was not a good choice. Okay, so I have to say my career break was not necessarily a good choice. I really wanted to stay working, but I loved being at home too, so I needed to make that decision, which one is it going to be? And I think the hardest thing for me coming back, even though I knew I wanted to be back here in Hawaii, my beautiful daughter is right there, the beautiful Samoan girl, and I wanted her to be here. I wanted her to be in Hawaii, and we'd been here before. This was a good place to be. So I knew that, and I felt that, not only the confirmation from the Lord that was the right choice. The hardest thing for me was I'm not home when she gets home. I can't always be at her school events. I can't always be where I want to be. And so you do have to emotionally come to grips with the fact that your life will be different. And some things about it are really great, and some things about it are not. well, you can't come to my something. No, I'm so sorry, you know. But you have to keep remembering why you did what you did and what happened during that break, which was really wonderful, and build on those experiences, and then make sure that the job doesn't take over your life. Because it is easy when you come back to let your job take over your life. And I guess I just want to give that advice to you in general. It's easy for your job to become your life, and your job's not your life. And my students have a Friday assignment every Friday, a homework assignment. And I'm not any of your professors, at least not now. I wasn't. But I'm giving you a homework assignment for Friday. You must do something fun on the weekend. And that's a serious assignment, because we oftentimes get so wrapped up in our career that we don't take time for some of the things that are far more important, which are a family, our responsibilities at church. And so when you come back, you have to really look at, how do I balance that? And I think maybe having been out for a while, it was easier for me to make that decision, because up to that point, that was what I had, my career. And so that was kind of my life. And so it was a good thing for me to have taken a break and then come back. But find that balance and make sure that you stay balanced.
I know I came from the perspective where I didn't have a career, and I started just raising my family. And so that's kind of all that I knew, and that was my life. And I threw myself into raising my 7 children and experiencing life together. I did have some friends who had a career and then left it to start a family. And that was an adjustment for them, because they had felt very successful in a career, that there was constant rewards, a way of feeling fulfilled. And then when they were at home with a brand new baby, they felt like, well, my house is dirty, I have a crying baby, and I don't have the same social interactions, and they didn't feel as fulfilled as they had before. Because raising children is not an instantaneous gratification. It's a long-term commitment that is very rewarding over the long term, but it's not an instant gratification experience.
Not every day.
It's not a red carpet experience every day.
But you will have the greatest joy and satisfaction out of raising children than you could ever experience in any career. So I think that just recognize that it is a totally different experience, and throw yourself into and recognize what it is that you're doing and the great role that you're playing in that child's life and the impact that you will have on generations to come. And if you keep that in mind and you develop support groups with other stay-at-home moms and neighborhoods and ward groups, then this is what will help to sustain you and help to give you social outlets and develop such strong bonds that help support you through the process. And they give you great ideas too, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
So I think there's adjustments both ways, and just recognize that whatever you're doing at that point in your life, then recognize the important work that it is that you are engaged in.
I think the one area that I think about, because I was like you, I took care of my kids from the time I worked a little bit in the beginning, and it's really between you and Heavenly Father first and foremost. If you don't go to Heavenly Father and really talk to Him about it, He knows your heart as much as, I'm sorry, He actually knows your heart better than you do. You may just not know His heart as well. And so if you can line those two together, you'll be able to make decisions. There's I got a quote, and it said, it's by President Russell M. Ballard, and he said, "One sister may be inspired to continue her education and attend medical school, allowing her to have significant impact on her patients and to advance medical research. For another sister, inspiration may lead her to forego a scholarship to a prestigious institution and instead begin a family much earlier than has become common in this generation, allowing her to make a significant and eternal impact on her children now." How many of you have seen it's called One Heart? How many of you have seen the One Heart that the General Women's Auxiliary leaders put out?
Oh, yes, I did.
It is amazing. 10 women, 10 different things that happened to them, choices that they had to make. It's about you. Anybody can tell you. Pink, the song Like Fire, I love to run to that. It makes me just go really fast because it says, you can have it all. And I'm like, yes, I can. And then I realize I really can't. Because if I want to stand before Heavenly Father and really have Him like the book I wrote, the author that I am of that book, then I need to have His consideration in my judgment and choice in the end. And so whichever one it turns out to be, no one right answer is right. It is possible for two similarly faithful women to receive such different responses to the same basic question. Absolutely. What's right for one woman may not be right for the other. That's why it's so important that you should not question each other's choices. Don't diminish the other's choice, support it, but go to Him and He'll help you make the right one.
Thank you. We've had some wonderful answers to some questions tonight, but we'd like to open it up now to our audience. And if we have any extra questions, we have enough time for probably one or two questions. Yes?
How do you prevent yourself from comparing, recognize, because I'm going back after 10 years, and so how do you keep yourself from saying, I should have done this 10 years ago?
Well, you acknowledge it's okay to feel that way for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then stand at the front of the mirror and brag.
Mm-hmm.
And take it to the Lord. This was the choice I know I needed to make. Now I need to feel better about it, and then start doing that self-affirmation. Because we can't worry so much about what everybody else is thinking and how we think they're thinking about us. It's really between you and the Lord, and you know it was the right decision. So, if you're not keeping a good journal where you're bragging about yourself often in your journal so you can remember all of the good things, do that. And I think women particularly are really hard on themselves. We see all of the things that we should have done. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. And it doesn't help. Here's where I am now, and how am I moving forward? And really keep a focus on where you're going, because you're going to do great things. And you had great things in the 10 years, so that's good too.
I think that was perfect.
It was good.
Yeah.